Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back. Well, the spirit of vintage, Hughes and Kettner. They have a few different models of this amplifier, and this is their new Nano series. It's been on the market for a little while, and you know, it's kind of like they mimic tube amps, okay? And so this is the vintage model, where it's kind of like your vintage clean tone, I guess you would say. Then of course they've got a metal one, etc. Right? And I'm not sure if I would consider collecting all three at $300 a pop, but I don't know. I was in Long McQuaid yesterday. I was looking for a new toy, right? I've got guitars. I really don't need to buy any more except for like one more acoustic. To be honest, I'm trying to scale down stuff to just what I need to accomplish all my goals in life with music. And I've gone through, as you guys know, a whack load of gear, like tens of thousands of dollars of gear in the last 6 years. And taken a lot of heavy losses too on the returns. But, you know, in the end it's kind of worth it if you finally find all those right pieces to do what you need to do. Now, although you do normally plug this into a cab, I did not get a cab. Didn't want one. Well, I kind of did, but they didn't have anything but a trainer cab, and that was a lot of extra money. And personally, I don't like trainer, but we did plug it into a trainer cab to try it out because I wanted to know roughly what it would sound like, you know. Now, there's benefits to this thing, so let's crack open the box and keep on yakking, okay? So in that, we do have a headphone jack. We have our input jack up front. We have gain, tone, the sagging control, and of course our master. But we have other benefits to this amp, which is why we don't actually need a cab. And I started going through some stuff around the house, and believe it or not, I still actually have the original speaker from one of my Audition 20s, still mounted on its front facing. So I think I'm going to build that into a cab. I just got to get some material and some time to do it, and I can actually build an 8-inch cab for this thing if I decide I want one down the road. But I don't need a cab to use this because it actually has a line out on it. So we can go right into a PA with it. Like, you could take something like this, literally, and I kid you not, because it wouldn't be the first time I've done it. You could actually take this to your gig and plug into the PA there with the line out. You don't need to carry a cab with you. And the advantage of the PA is it amplifies your main instrument. Because a lot of guys, they mic up their amps, right? I personally don't believe in miking up amps. I've tried it before. I don't like the sound I get out of it. It's just not for me. I think it's horrible. But everybody's different, right? So, of course, we've got our power cord, we've got our manual, which, well, we'll take a look at it some other day, but we do get a manual, because it's too simple to run this thing. But on the back here, we do have speaker out from 4 ohms to 16 ohms. Now, they do specify, too, at 8 ohms, you do get 25 watts. The higher you go in ohms, the less wattage output you're going to get. And, of course, the lower you go in ohms, the more wattage output you're going to get. It is a bit of an increase with going from 8 to 4 ohms. It's not exactly double. It's usually, depending on the amp and everything, it's usually between 40 to anywhere, surprisingly enough, up to 80% more power. The problem is when you go with the lower ohmage speakers, they tend to sound a little gross. So, anyways, we do have a power AES control. Now that is something actually we should actually take a look at the manual for, but from what I heard on a YouTube video, the thing will automatically shut itself off if it's active after 30 minutes. Some sort of a UK thing, they figure. Line out, auxiliary in, so you can plug in your CD player, or, you know, old-fashioned CD player, MP3 player, phone, whatever, to play your music through. So, and it's going to be at a fixed control volume based on your device, because there is no upfront control for your auxiliary stuff. So it's kind of a cute little package. It looks like a miniature version of an actual real amp, but it is a real amp, just a little miniature version of a Hughes. And I did have a Hughes, what was it, a 18 watt or something, long time back, and it wasn't a bad amp, don't get me wrong, but like all things, I mean, you know, things go for a reason, and you know, it was the whole thing of being in search for just the right thing. So AES is referring to Communications Regulation number 1275, 2008. Electrical and electronic device need to be equipped with an energy-saving mechanism which automatically switches the device off after not being used for a certain period of time. On your Hughes and Kettner amp, this mechanism is called AES. It can be activated and deactivated with the mini switch next to the power button and speaker jack. Factory default, it's on. Well, you know what? Factory default in this dojo, it stays off. We don't do that energy saving thing here. We don't need things shutting off on us. So that is a very, very little tiny switch. So what we need is a very tiny little screwdriver or Allen key. And I'm going to use an Allen key because I got one really handy here. And we're going to just flick that switch to off. And there we go. So push it to the right and it's off. No energy saving feature. So anyway, give me a couple minutes. I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to set this up where I want it anyways. We're going to plug in a guitar and we're going to see what it sounds like through my reference monitors, through the studio gear. And we'll continue on. So instant for you. Alright guys, we got her set up and I think I got it figured out on the board. Interesting little beast. We are going through line out, of course, into my PA. And we're going through my Mackie CR X5's reference monitors. Like I said, I don't have a cab for this. I was actually talking to a buddy of mine in between segments here, and he's got my old trainer cab. And he said, yeah, if you want it back, man, you can have it. I'm not using it. I'm like, sweet. Awesome. That thing, if I remember right, it's got either a 10 or a 12-inch speaker in it. But anyways, so I guess I'll have a cab eventually next time we can get together. I figure we're going to jam the thing. But as far as sound goes, guys, don't be too misjudgmental here. We are using a camcorder with stereo mics, but I want to try and keep the sound as real as possible so that it's not processed or any of that sort of stuff, you know what I mean? But I do have the camera set up a little over 4 feet away from the speakers, and we're not exactly cranked to the hilt here, but so I am using my gold top Epiphone Les Paul for this. Turns out the Gibby has to go in, it has some control issues, so yeah, I guess I'm going to North Bay again today to get that thing to be serviced. So but hey, it's a couple years old and yeah, it needs to be get looked over. But this sucker's working perfect. So, sagging control. I want to go through the manual a little bit with you guys, just to give you an idea here. So, what is sagging? Along with the gain and tone controls, sagging is your key knob for making new and exciting sounds. This knob gives you full control over the power amp's saturation level and behavior at any volume. It lets you delicately control the creaminess of your tone and lets you dial through decades of guitar sounds with a twist of the wrist. The more sag and the more saturation in the power amp. Depending on the gain setting, sagging will also influence the level of the power amp from far left at minimum sagging level to the center position. The volume will increase from the center to the far right position, maximum sagging. The volume may drop. Please use the master control to adjust the overall volume. Okay, now wattage output. We can go from 4 to 16 ohms. Now the nominal is 8 ohms for 25 watts. However, if you use a 4 ohm speaker on this thing, you get 48 watts of power output. That's 98% more power. If you want to do the math in that direction. Now, at 16 ohms, you're only going to get 13 watts. So you're going to actually lose 12 watts worth of horsepower, which means the amp is also going to behave way different between 4 ohm and 16. 16 is going to take a lot more volume, so you're going to get a lot more adjustability but less overall output. 4 ohms, you're going to get very super sensitive controls, and you're going to reach the top end of the amp a lot sooner. So your headroom for cleanliness is not going to be as present, I guess you could call it, I guess. So you're best actually, honestly, to use 8 ohms for maximum full range and all that sort of thing. So we are on the bridge pickup, and these pickups do not coil split like my Gibson does. So here's the bridge. Both pickups. And the neck. So let's play around a little bit with that sagging control. So sagging off. Remember, they said it does affect the output a bit too. So that definitely is showing a lot of output differences. So if we go full sag, now I've noticed I'm clipping my board here. So what I'm going to have to do is reduce things. Volume. So you can clean it up more. So the tone is going to allow you to take a lot of that bite off too. Because if there's one thing I cannot tolerate is way too much treble. But we could bring the treble up a bit. And we can control the mids and trebles from the board side. So we get just the right mix. After. Okay, so let's bring the master down. Let's bring that gain full tilt. Let's turn the sag to 0. So if you want some distortion on this thing, So let's try a little short recording here, just for giggles, and see what the playback difference is compared to what we're hearing. Okay, let's play that back. Virtually identical. Anyways, yeah, it's a really fun amp. If you want it clean though, it can be very clean. So let's try a quick little clean recording. Yeah, we'll play that back. I'd say that's as identical as it gets. So, anyways, you want vintage tones, this thing can give them to you. If you want plenty of horsepower, this thing's got it. When I tried this out in the store last night, we had, I believe the gain was somewhere around here, and we had the master probably here at the very most, if I remember right. And it was so loud through that big trainer cab, we vibrated everything in the store. And my wife's alarm went off on her phone because she's got a dB thing. And we hit 90 dB. And we still have a long ways to go here, you know. And we're still producing like 90 dBs. That's pretty loud. So that's a lot. And we're just going, you know, line out to my board and, you know, through these speakers. And I can't remember the wattage of these offhand, but they've got some good output. But anyways, it is clean, and it can get very dirty, and it can get overly, extremely dirty. You have a lot of shaping with the sagging control, and the tone control really helps a lot too. The tone is not overly demanding. So if you're looking at overall tonal response here, it's not too much. But when you start getting that gain up there, it'll bite a bit more. And the tone is not acting like a typical tone, because this is kind of a little more dullard. This is a little bit brighter. That's kind of a little bit of in between. So it's not your typical tone knob, right? It's not treble, it's not bass, it's tone. Just as a quick look, because that is interesting. Tone. This powerful one knob sound shaping tool is fine-tuned for each model, of course. and it specifically addresses the frequency ranges that define each model's characteristical tone. Well, that's about all we get to know. Gain controls saturation level and works with the tone and sagging controls. That's, you know, that's the norm there. But yeah, I do read through the manual though. But we do have the vintage, Spirit of Vintage, which is mine. We got the Spirit of Rock and the Spirit of Metal. Now, I have to go into Long McQuaid today to take my Les Paul in to get serviced, my Gibson. I've cleaned those pots a number of times, and I guess they're still got some issues sitting there. So, but I might see about what it would cost to rent the other two if they have both in stock. But I do know they do have the Spirit of Metal, so we may try renting that one if we can. But if I can get both, I will. I will say this, no matter which way it turns out, of course, there is no way I'm going to be buying the other two. If I did buy another one, I would probably go after the Rock than the Metal, because I have tons of metal tones built into my Katana Air amp. You know, I wanted a vintage tone amp, period. This thing does deliver that vintage tone. It's very clean. It can get dirty in some aspects the wrong way for my taste, but in other aspects it can get dirty to some of the type of tone I like. I'm not the vintage guitar player type like your guys like Hendrix and Page and Clapton and all that. I grew up not really caring for those people myself, don't take offense, but we each have our own taste in music. But I do like the Hughes amps, and I like this Nano style. It's so small and compact. You can literally take this thing anywhere, and it's lightweight. You know, it's got some metal to it as well, and it does get a little warm. But it is not a tube amp, and it's not a hybrid tube amp, so there is no tubes to worry about in this. It's fully solid state, but it is designed to precisely as possible mimic a tube amp, and it does a pretty good job at that. I'll give it that. It really does. It does a nice job. And I haven't owned a lot of tube amps or played on a lot of tube amps, but I got a pretty good ear for sound, and this does a nice job. And being Hughes and Kettner, it is definitely a quality product. Now in Canada, these things sell for $300 a pop. So, and it doesn't matter which one you buy, each one of the models of the Nanos are each $300 each. So you can buy all three, and there goes $900 in tax, or buy the one that, you know, suits your playing style the best, or buy two if that's what you need. They are kind of cool, and the fact that you can just plug into any PA means you also don't have to lug around a big cab with you either. You know, so if you're doing a gig in a large area, you know, I mean, the majority of concerts I've seen on YouTube, you always see stage monitors on stage, and you see guys miking up their amps, and it's like so unnecessary when you can just go line out from this right into your PA and have the engineer put up to your monitor anyways the sound that you need through there, so you can hear yourself playing, right? Because your speakers for your audience are usually in front of you, so you wouldn't hear yourself right. But that would definitely do the trick. So you don't really need wattage. It's not always about the wattage of your amp itself. You know, you just need to route things properly. But I like the cool light up display too. Very nice, very well done. Love how it spreads kind of like an old-fashioned street lamp with the spread of the LEDs. It's kind of really neat. And it's got that typical Hughes and Kettner blue that we all know, which is also very cool. I think one thing I would have probably done, but it wouldn't be vintage. Like they went with these knobs because it's kind of the vintage thing, but I think they should have gone black maybe. But otherwise I would have just, you know, put all the like the chrome metal knobs. I would have probably gone gold myself, you know, just because I have a gold fetish. But you know what? It looks still really good. Like it is appealing to look at. It is cool, and everything fits. You know, as far as my desk goes. You know, I've got my Katana. I've got this. I've got my mic. I've got this. My computer's up above. Of course, screen's on the other side. So, you know, everything's at my fingertips, which is the way I need it. You know, so like I'd said, I didn't want to buy a big amp. You know, something small like this works great, right to the board. We got it. So in case you're curious about how I've set this, so they're controllable. There is mic line slots on mixing boards, okay? Balanced connection points. I'm using a TRS cable out the back of this into, well, channel 4 in this case. There's a thing here for reducing your dB by about 26 dB cut. So that's active. And so is the high pass filter, which is usually for mics, but it actually works really good with this too. My gain is set at about 230, and of course my main level down below on the fader knob, we've got it set at around 11 o'clock to get what we got. And then we can control and manipulate around with this to get exactly what we want out of it, and without clipping the board either. Because you don't want to be clipping your signal, because then it sounds like garbage. So, is it worth 300 bucks? Yes. I do believe it definitely is. Is it worth 5 stars? Are you kidding me? It never is. But it's definitely worth 4.5, I'll give it that. You know, one thing I did find too was I was going to try and go through the headphone out. And the headphone out doesn't really have hardly any output. It's designed for headphones. So don't try and use the headphone out for going into your board with. You're not going to really enjoy that experience. The line out has a lot more output, which is designed to go into boards with, so that's what you would use. Like I said, it does run 4 to 16 ohm cabs, so it doesn't matter. It just automatically knows if it's got a 4, 8, or a 16 ohm speaker attached. It will know that. The AES control is an energy saving feature thing. We turn those things off in this dojo. We don't like energy saving features. We turn it off when we want it off. The entire overall construction of it is very good. Definitely give it that. Quality jacks on this thing for inputs and outputs. You know, 24 volt power supply, nice little brick that comes with it. You know, so we got plenty of juice. But you know what? For a solid state amp, it definitely does an awesome job of mimicking a vintage amp tone. And you can get a lot out of this thing. Now, I have watched some YouTube videos too, where guys were putting pedals to these things, and they do take pedals very well. You just got to keep in mind, you got to get the cleanest possible sound first, and then put your pedals on. I mean, that's kind of an important thing, obviously. But I like how the tone works, though. It's not your typical tone. It kind of reminds me a lot of the Orange Micro Dark amps and the Micro Terror with their tone shaping capabilities. It's not bass, it's not treble. It's kind of a little bit of everything. And it helps you to really shape your sound to what you want. And those are hybrid tube amps. I still might pick up a Terror eventually, but this one kind of broke the wallet after this was paid for, so, and it's not like I need them, you know. This is something that I wanted, and I kind of needed a little bit, because I like playing the blues a lot, and I prefer a more vintage sound for blues, because blues is old school, you know, and so I kind of been looking for that old school tone, and this actually does a really good job. But I still want to check out the other ones either way. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below about this amp. I know we went through the camcorder for this, but I wanted to give you as realistic of a sound as possible with absolutely zero processing involved, because I don't like to play tricks. I like to give it to you as it is. Anyways, your speakers, of course, do determine a lot on your own computer or device how well you're going to hear that represented sound. So that's another thing too. I hear it differently than you will. So the idea is to give you a pretty good ballpark of the idea. Yeah, definitely I would say that if this is something you're after, that you're looking for, try one out at your local music store, see what you think, and if you like it, for 300 bucks, I definitely say it's worth the money, okay? I kid you not. Anyway, that's it. That's all. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.